The wind sweeps across the frozen steppe. Once thousands of mammoths roamed this land. Now only a small herd remains, slowly pushing forward through the wet snow. The ice is retreating. Winter is no longer what it once was. And without realizing it, these animals are walking toward their end. This is the story of how the mammoths disappeared. Not in a single day. Not because of one great catastrophe, but through a long chain of small changes, choices, pressures, and mistakes that together extinguished one of the most extraordinary creatures ever to walk the earth. To understand their end, we must return to the beginning. Who were the mammoths really? Today they exist almost as legend. Enormous, shaggy elephants with massive curved tusks wandering through endless snow and ice. But for tens of thousands of years, mammoths were no myth. For early humans, they were part of everyday life. Mammoths were close relatives of modern elephants. There were several species, some larger, some smaller, but the most famous was the woolly mammoth. It stood up to 3 meters tall at the shoulder and was covered in thick brown fur. Beneath that fur lay a heavy layer of fat, protecting it from the brutal cold. Its ears were small, conserving heat, while its long, curved tusks could grow over 4 meters in length. They lived in herds, mothers, calves, and young males moving together across vast open landscapes. They followed the seasons and the pastures, searching for dry grasses, mosses, and roots. Life was harsh, but it was familiar, a world of wind, snow, frozen plains, and endless horizons. The mammoths did not live alone. This was an age of giants. Woolly rhinoceroses thundered across the plains. Enormous bison grazed in great numbers. Saber-toothed cats hunted in the shadows. Cave bears ruled their territories. The last great ice age was a cold world, but one overflowing with life. For humans, mammoths were everything. Their meat meant survival, food for weeks at a time. Their skins became clothing and tents. Their bones and tusks were turned into tools, weapons, and even shelters. In some regions, archaeologists have uncovered entire dwellings built from mammoth bones and covered with hides. For our ancestors, a mammoth was not a luxury. It was the difference between life and death. They roasted the meat over open fires, smoked it, and preserved it in every way they could. Survival depended on nothing going to waste. Mammoths were also deeply present in human culture. Their images were carved into bone, engraved into stone, and painted onto cave walls across Europe and Asia. These drawings tell us something important. Humans did not only hunt mammoths, they watched them, learned from them, and spoke about them. Mammoths were woven into stories, memory, and identity. For the people of the Ice Age, mammoths were as central to life as cattle or horses are today. Yet even giants can fall. The world of the mammoths was built on ice. As long as the ice endured, so did they. During the last ice age, immense ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere. Sea levels were lower, and vast regions that are underwater today were once dry land, cold steppes and frozen grasslands stretching from Spain to Siberia. This frozen corridor was the mammoth's kingdom. But the Earth is never still. Climate changes always. Around 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age began to loosen its grip. Temperatures slowly rose, ice sheets melted, the landscape transformed, grasslands shrank, wetlands spread, forests advanced where open plains once stretched to the horizon. And with those changes, the world the mammoths depended on began to disappear. Temperatures did not rise in a single day, or even in a single year. They rose slowly, century after century. Glaciers began to withdraw. Sea levels climbed. The vast frozen steppes were reshaped. The dry grasses that sustained the mammoths slowly vanished. In their place came forests, wetlands, and unfamiliar plants. For many species, this transformation was survivable. Some adapted, others moved on. But mammoths were specialists, engineered for cold, open landscapes. Their bodies were built for endless winters, not for a world growing warmer, wetter, and greener. Imagine a mammoth herd during this time of transition. Calves struggle to find enough food as grass becomes scarce. Ancient migration routes no longer exist. Where there were once solid, frozen plains, there are now rivers swollen with meltwater, deep mud, and unstable ground. The land itself becomes an obstacle. Habitats shrink. Competition increases. Mammoths are forced to share the remaining open areas with other herbivores, and the changing climate brings more than hunger, it brings disease. Parasites that once died in the deep cold begin to survive and spread. Milder winters lead to longer summers, and with them, an explosion of insects and microbes. For a single mammoth, one year may feel much like the last. But over centuries, everything changes. Herds grow smaller. Populations thin. Some disappear entirely, leaving no trace behind. And then there is another force at work, smaller, faster, and far more adaptable. Humans. As the climate changed, so did humanity. Tools improved. Spears became sharper. Hunting became coordinated and strategic. Humans learned the land, setting ambushes and using fear itself as a weapon. A healthy adult mammoth was immensely dangerous. One charge could mean death, but panic changed everything. Driven toward cliffs, frozen lakes, or deep swamps, the mammoth's great strength could become its downfall. There is no evidence that humans alone wiped out the mammoths in a short span of time, but wherever modern humans spread, large animals often began to vanish. This pattern is not accidental. Together, the pressures were devastating. Less habitat, less food, more hunting. Each lost herd was a piece of the future erased. One final factor made the mammoths' fate even more fragile: their numbers. When a species declines, it rarely disappears everywhere at once. Small, isolated populations can survive in pockets where conditions remain favorable. For mammoths, some of these refuges were remote, cold islands, such as Rangel Island in the Arctic Ocean. There, mammoths endured long after they had vanished from the continents. Over time, they even became smaller. Dwarf mammoths adapted to limited resources and confined spaces. But isolation comes at a cost. Small populations mean reduced genetic diversity. With fewer individuals, harmful traits spread more easily. Disease, weakness, and vulnerability increase. All it takes is one severe storm, one harsh winter, or a new illness carried by animals or humans to wipe out an entire population. Eventually, even these last refuges fell silent. The final mammoth died, without knowing it was the last of its kind. For him, it was just another winter. For the Earth, it was the end of an age. Mammoths have not vanished completely, not from the memory of our planet. Ice has preserved many of them. In Siberia, Alaska, and other lands of permanent frost, explorers have uncovered mammoths not as scattered bones, but as almost whole bodies: skin, fur, tendons, stomach contents, even eyes still recognizable. Some were found by children at play, others by hunters or ivory seekers along northern rivers. Sometimes the ground collapses as the ice melts, and from a wall of frozen earth emerges a massive, fur-covered paw, untouched for thousands of years. For scientists, these discoveries are treasure troves. From stomach contents, they learn what mammoths ate. From bones, how they lived. From fur and teeth, the climates they endured. And from DNA, how they relate to modern elephants, allowing researchers to trace their family tree. Each frozen mammoth is not just a fossil from a textbook. It is proof of a real creature that once walked the earth, that felt cold, hunger, and fear, that followed its herd and protected its young. And now comes the final chapter of their story: DNA. Today, we can read their genetic code. Some scientists are asking whether it might be possible to create elephants with mammoth-like traits, not true mammoths, but elephants adapted to the cold, with thicker fur and layers of fat, able to survive in environments that resemble the ancient Ice Age. The idea is controversial. Some see it as a way to better understand the past or even restore damaged ecosystems. Others fear it is a dangerous game with nature. But beyond the debate lies a deeper point. For thousands of years, humans drew mammoths on cave walls. Today, we recreate them on computer screens in strings of genetic code. It reveals just how much power we now hold over the living world. Yet the story of mammoths is not only about the past, it speaks directly to the present. They did not disappear for a single reason. The climate shifted, their habitats shrank, human hunting increased, herds grew smaller until they could no longer survive. A combination of forces drove them to extinction, the same kind now pushing countless species toward the edge: rhinos, elephants, tigers, polar bears. Animals familiar to us, just as mammoths were to our ancestors. Today they walk the earth. Tomorrow they may exist only as images in books or skeletons in museums. So if one day you stand before a mammoth skeleton in an exhibition hall, pause for a moment. Don't see it merely as a prehistoric giant. Imagine the herd crossing snowy plains, calves trailing behind their mothers, long migrations through storms and endless cold. Those bones are proof that even the mightiest can vanish. And they remind us of a simple truth. Today, we are deciding the future of many species. We can keep consuming habitats and lives as if they were endless, or we can choose to protect what remains. The mammoths will never truly return. Their frozen world is gone forever, but their story survives in ice, in earth, in museums, and in the words we pass on. And every time we tell it, it asks us a question. What will we do for the animals that still share this planet with us? If this story has helped you see mammoths in a new light, stay with me on this journey. On the Eclesso channel, every great story from the past becomes a new way to understand the present.